excellence. Hey, all I require for life, God has given me, and I know who I am. We are a chosen generation. A pleasant good morning to you. Show His excellence. You're locked on to Hope 103.1 FM. And we're about to start another session of Leadership Plus. I am what He says I am. Where He says. Inside the studio with us is Reverend John Lewis, who God says I am. The director of GITE. Where He says I'm at, I know who I am. I'm working in power. I work in miracles. I live a life of favor. Good morning, Reverend Lewis, and how are you today?
Supposed to be with you another Wednesday. It's always a joy to come and to share with us some of the important leadership values that we have gleaned from these writers that provide us insight and give us some direction for how we can improve on our leadership development and organizations, companies, governments, and even as individuals as well.
Right. So today our topic or the text that we're looking at today is hidden value. Could you elaborate on that? What is hidden value?
Great. So the authors of this book is they are O'Reilly and Piffer. It's a 2000 edition of the book called Hidden Value. And what they did was to look at 25 companies and 25 organizations and to examine what are some of the values that may not be obvious and what is it that allows them to succeed and to excel in their field of manufacturing, of other companies in giving services, providing guidance and direction, whether it's in a church organization, whether it's in politics, and they seek to unearth some of the values that are integral and needs to be integrated into organizations that will allow them to succeed as well.
Right. Okay, so we know that every prudent, businessman or or owner enters into business to make a profit and to do well. So in the face of doing business, it evolves. The face of doing business has evolved over the years. And today we're talking about hidden value. Could you share a little bit more light on what are those hidden values referred to by the text?
Great. So there are several components that are mentioned in these hidden values. For example, they talk about re-engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with taking a hard look at where your company is or where your organization is and deliberately strategize, evaluate, and determine where do we need to go back and re-energize and restructure, reorganize our companies for better efficiency and greater effectiveness. Companies, organizations who are successful will do that on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of redrawing some of their initial plans, withdrawing some of their beliefs in some sense that they need to reorganize. And sometimes we get stuck in the status quo. We get stuck in doing the same things over and over again and without success. So it really calls us to consider how we can reinvigorate, re-engineer, reorganize our companies, especially in these critical times. Mm-hmm. We cannot function the same way we did pre-COVID. There's no company, organization, church can function in the same vein that we did, say, let's 2 years ago, and expect to succeed. So this is a critical value that every person, every organization must determine where we need to go, what we need to change, what we need to improve, and how we need to determine the direction and achievement we want to accomplish in these difficult times.
Right. So you just pointed out that it is important that we analyze, our companies or organization for success is more or less hinged on how good we analyze and we strategize. Could you tell us a little bit more of how can you energize your members or employees in an organization?
Great. So we have to go back and take a hard look at where we are. We talked about a personal assessment and even an organizational assessment, and referred to some of the tools that we looked at. We talked about reframing an organization and look at the different frameworks that we can use as a guide, as a blueprint for restructuring and reorganization. But there has to be a willingness to do that. Sometimes we are not quite as eager and enthusiastic about change and about making a difference within our companies and organization. Sometimes the slogan is, if it is not broken, why are we trying to fix it? But the issue behind that is sometimes we're not even aware that it's broken. And that's where the pitfall is.
Right.
If we assume that everything is okay and we are on a journey, we are on a trajectory, we are on a particular timeline and time frame, and walking the same route will get there, only to find out that perhaps later on that we have not really done a great assessment and serious analysis of what we are doing.
Right. So that leader must be aware, or even if it's not the leader, or at least have someone assigned that is, able to have that eye to see, okay, we need to make certain adjustments here, and certain things could be done differently.
Great. So in every organization, or even management teams and leadership teams, there is that person in your team that is self-critical. Sometimes we don't like that person on our team, and we think that this person is negative toward the team or the mission of the team, but that person becomes an advocate for improvement.
Right.
This person has an eye for detail, for us when we veer off the track, when we are not following the rules, when we're not aiming at accomplishing the stated goals, the stated objectives for our companies, our organizations. And that's the person that you need very much on your team. And it may cause you some heartache. It may cause you some sometimes the comments or the evaluation may be hard, but what you need is an honest evaluation of where we are. Sometimes we're not good at hearing those criticisms. And how we take criticism is a sign of our leadership.
Right.
And be willing to admit mistakes, admit our areas of weaknesses, and staff those weaknesses with stronger people, with the people of strength that enables us to accomplish our goals and mission.
Yes, so we must be able to, as leaders, take constructive criticism. I see a lot of times we struggle to accept the truth of what it is. Sometimes it stings, but it is for the betterment of our organization. Would you say that type of observational person, it falls under the intellectual or the emotional intelligence of that person?
Well, I think it's a combination of everything involved. The intellectual ability to analyze, it's critical. The maturity of the person refers to the emotional intelligence. And so those combinations will enable such a person to really take a serious look. And that's why an evaluation is not necessarily with everybody agreeing with you, but the willingness to take criticism that are helpful to you, and then we could move on from the areas of weakness.
Okay.
Okay. And so those combinations will enable such a person to really take a serious look. And that's why an evaluation is not necessarily with everybody agreeing with you, but the willingness to take criticism that are helpful to you, and then we could move on from the areas of weakness.
So could you tell us some of the resources or some of the things that fall under each category? We're looking at the hidden value this morning. So what are some of the intellectual or emotional resources that employees or members possess?
Great. So we look at the maturity of the people that you bring onto your leadership team.
Right.
Leadership is not for children
Mm-hmm.
or for immature people. And so you do an evaluation of each person on your leadership team before asking them to serve. You would observe their partnerships or their developments, how they execute responsibilities. They people who are have a great sense of time and achievement, accomplishment. They would have had some history in the past that show that they are committed people to a particular goal. They're passionate about what they do, and you look for those kind of people that will help and establish your company or organization or even within your church. When it comes to the church, we are talking even more about the spiritual maturity.
Mm-hmm.
We may be matured in other areas of our lives, but it's just such a critical role for the spiritual growth and development of our churches that when we bring an immature person in leadership in a denominational sense, we tend to have fallouts and suffer the consequences of that. So that calls for serious, what in the Christian faith, we talk about the gift of discernment.
Right, right.
And so that is a gifting that is given within the context of the church. And that's a gift that sometimes we tend to neglect rather than to emphasize it and to uphold the view that this is one of the specialized gifts that God has given the church.
Right. So the leader, upon meeting a new member or a new employee, must have an eye, as you say, discernment to be able to see who the person is, what are their capabilities. I mean, how can a leader manage the occasion where he may be able to discern, okay, this is your strength, but the individual may not see it as part of their build-up. How can a leader address the person to encourage them to embrace, the new or the area that God has assigned them to?
Great. So there are practical steps we can do to determine those gifts or talents, and they're proven tools, scientific tools that we can work through with this person or persons to allow them to see the facts about their own giftedness or their own strengths and their own weaknesses. And even when we complete these testings, it really calls for a deep sense of honesty.
Right.
Be honest to answer the questions, the query, and the interesting things about these surveys or these assessments is as they ask you the same questions in different ways several times during a questionnaire or during an assessment, and can determine whether you're speaking the truth or. But the sad part of those people who try to say assume a role that they are not competent in and assume that role of competency, it does not do them any good.
Right.
And so when we are honest and mark ourselves and check this box about our attitude, about our performance, about the things that we are capable of, it gives us a greater sense of who we actually are and how do we fit. Now, companies do these exercises and determine where you fit within their organizations, rather than just handpick somebody without those assessments and put them in a leadership function. And usually, if it is not a fit, then we can have conflict and we can have dissonance in terms of how our role is supposed to be worked out and how we ought to complete our vision for a particular group, company, organization, even in government as well.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're discussing hidden value. There may have been some ways that businesses will have functioned before, and they may have been focusing on other areas, to develop and to gain profit. But today we're talking about hidden value and more so energizing, and we're talking about intellectual and emotional intelligence. Reverend John, how can you tap into those resources in your human resource? How can you tap into emotional and intellectual resource?
Well, the first thing is a desire to know,
Mm-hmm.
um, the willingness to do the hard work, to do your own study of yourself. You look at how others have done this work and researched these topics,
Mm-hmm.
and even to have a sense of accountability to someone else, and ask them to look at your findings, to look at what you have self-evaluated, and have a face-to-face, honest discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Someone may have observed you over the years and says, well, this is true of you, but I don't think this is true of you.
Right.
And to be willing to even to confront in a loving way
Mm-hmm.
that these are not your strengths, these are not your weaknesses, but these are some things you need to look at and how you can improve in these particular areas. So accountability is so critical as a leader, and the willingness to learn,
Mm-hmm.
and to move on from where we are. Some of us have held old misconceptions
Mm-hmm.
that we have held on to, only to discover that these are not things that will cause us to succeed,
Right.
to become progressive in terms of what we can do and how much more we can accomplish if we let go of some of these notions and misconceptions in the past. But some of the other things that they looked at these companies
Mm-hmm.
was the fast cycle time.
Okay.
Now everything happens instantly. How the news cycle just changes every minute, it looks like. And even as we are doing this program, what's happening in Afghanistan is right before our eyes.
Right. Right.
What's happening in Haiti, for example, is happening instantly.
Yes.
And so we must understand that the cycle is quickly moving past us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are lagging behind, if we don't understand the nature of the world in which we live,
Mm-hmm.
we are not able to meet the demands of the needs that are around us, how we can fulfill that.
Okay.
So there is a change in the cycles of time. Perhaps even pre-COVID, time was different.
Yes.
In that sense, how we function, how we communicate as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to have a sense of the urgency of the changing time cycle. And then, of course, there is a war for talent. People are trading, and if you look at the sports arena,
yes.
so they would pay millions to trade a player.
I know some of the football fans, they are grieving for Messi right now.
Right, so and companies, organizations, sports companies are willing to pay millions of dollars to have a trade for someone who they believe would bring the talent to make them the winning team.
Right.
And so there's a war for talent,
Mm-hmm.
and people are willing to pay for that because they can see how that could benefit what their passion is about. So you have to, like every good persons who are looking and they are recruiting, soccer players, for example, they are traveling, different countries sometimes. Now you can interview any part of the world for a particular kind of person that you're looking for. And so they're willing to invest time and resources for that. In the same way, from the church perspective, the challenge is for our own willingness to incorporate those same values, so that we have the best available people that could function and enhance the growth and development of even our churches as well.
Yeah, I think Jesus, was operated in that manner. And you look at the qualities of the 12, and you see how it rolled out in scripture, their sensitivities, maybe everything worked out perfectly. So yes, choosing the best person for your team is wise.
Great. So you're scooping for talents, you're scooping for the abilities of people that can function. And then the continuous innovation. And
Right.
we referred to that earlier. So it is not a one shot investment. It has to be where we are on a path to be innovative, and
Yeah.
it is done regularly. It's a move that we are taking and moving in that direction. Um, and then, of course, we have to engage in the giftings, the management that people have. We talked about the human capital, and that's the really heart of good leadership. When we invest in our people, when we inculcate good value in them, and cause these value to emerge and come to the forefront. Very often we are unaware of the value of people sitting in front of us.
Right, that's true.
Sometimes they're sitting right before our face, and sometimes because of our own biases, our own preferences,
Yeah.
the gifts and talents in front of us are not utilized,
Right.
are not mobilized in a way that can make us productive. And sometimes we see a person performing or exercising their strengths and their talents and their gifts, and we say, where has this person been? This person has been there all these years in front of us,
Yes, that's true.
and we have not unearthed the giftings. Those are values within people, and that calls for observation, and that takes time.
Yes.
Very often we're in a fast-paced mode to get things done immediately and instantly, and neglect the painstaking exercises of looking at our people that are within our companies, within our organization. And sometimes it takes an outside perspective to allow us or to point us in that direction.
Right. Right.
I recall in some cases that you draw the attention of some principals that this is a potential great teacher for you,
Right.
or this is a good manager that you must consider. Don't you see how this person functions? Don't you understand that this person has this particular strength?
Right.
Why are we not utilizing these people
Right.
within your organization in these particular roles? And sometimes it just takes that person coming sometimes outside without our organization, and coming in and point us to people that have been sitting right in front of us.
Yeah.
And the challenge here is our own willingness to admit that we lost sight of those persons. It says hindsight is the best sight, but having foresight and thinking through some of the things that the values that are hidden within individuals, hidden within corporations, organizations, that we can unearth and allow for greater productivity and greater development in the lives of a company, a church, even as individuals. How do we develop those gifts and talents?
Yes. We know that there's a statement that says, good is the enemy of better. Could you continue to speak on, continuous evaluation or continuous innovation?
Great. There's a good book out there called Good to Great, and it just highlights how we can be great, um, and not to buy into just what is just basically good. And that's the concept of constantly reviewing, constantly analyzing, constantly taking stock in a business sense, and how do we observe other companies, other churches, other organizations? Why is it that they're so successful? Um, and you know, great writers would look at these companies. In this particular book, they looked at 25 companies
Right.
and did assessment with their permission, of course. It was a research that they did to find out exactly why are these organizations so successful at what they do. And we have to do similarly within our own circle of our organization, whether it's a church, whether it's in politics, and whether it's in a community that we serve.
Yeah, because you go into business or you start an organization to be successful, and you want to engage in the things that will bring prosperity, will bring great or good or excellence to your organization. The text talks about respecting or appreciating your human capital. Could you talk a little bit more about that, Foot?
Great. So there are some inherent and non negotiable qualities and values that are necessary for success and profitability. And these, of course, as you mentioned, the human capital. These values include the recognition and appreciation of the human capital.
Yeah.
And that's the starting point for success within your company, organization, or church. And how do we emphasize that? And we read that so often, but we have to practice that. Do people feel value in your company? Do people feel valued in your church or in your business? Or do people feel a sense of value for their contribution to the success of your organizations? People leave companies and organizations primarily because they feel undervalued. And so we have to emphasize that ever so often, whether it's whatever group that you belong to, and that's a responsibility of your leader or your leadership team to identify the value that people bring. Of course, critical to this value that we're talking about is that of integrity. We cannot underestimate the value of the sense of integrity and how it affects performance in government, in businesses, in the church, in every sense of the word, and how to maintain that high sense of morale. And of course, another one that we talked about was innovation. There's another great book out there. It's called Innovate or Die. And
That's
that
a strong
just
statement.
that just says it all.
Yes, it does.
And so there's good reading material for all of us out there. And then a deliberate decision to against the status quo. If we are locked into a particular mindset that do not allow us to think outside of our comfort zone, as it were, um, because we are not willing to be bold
Right.
and daring in making changes.
Right.
And critically important is that with all these new and bold initiative, that we remain true to our value.
Right.
And so every company, every individual, every church has their particular value in which they serve. But these are non-negotiables, and businesses practices repress our natural tendency to have fun and socialize.
Yeah.
So very often the perspective to work is that it is drudgery or it is so demanding that we cannot enjoy what we do.
Right.
The idea seems to be that in order to succeed, you have to suffer, and that may have some truth to it. That part of the growth part, but it does not um, prevent us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the people who are enjoying what they are doing
Mm-hmm.
bring greater sense of value to to their work
That's true.
and to
Yeah.
the responsibilities that they carry out.
Mm-hmm.
If individuals think that it is just a 8 to 4 or 9 to 5 or
Mm-hmm.
whatever hours
Mm-hmm.
you use, so go in there and check out, check in, check out,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not passionate about what you do, there is no sense of personal fulfillment in it for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Right.
They do not perform to the best either.
Do you think that some the way these business processes and practices are, is it because they would have been conducting business on an archaic position, in that they would not have considered the intellectual and the emotional resource of individuals, so they may have formed practices just to get or to meet the objective by just doing task upon task? Could that be the case?
I believe so in some cases, but just to say that a number of companies now
Mm-hmm.
are taking seriously the value of their people.
Right.
Um, so much so they're providing services to take care of
Right.
you know s- children,
Mm-hmm.
um, providing care for infants and children within the company.
Right.
And so they provide spaces. They deliberately provide space. Um, these companies know that if the family is comfortable and happy,
Mm-hmm. Right.
then they will get more production.
That's true. They will worry less. The employees
Of
will worry
course,
less
they
because the
know that
kids.
they could look upon their
Mm-hmm.
infants
Yeah.
not too far from where they work, and
Right.
they're in the hands of safe
Yes.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it avoid them the stress of taking them to a daycare center.
Mm-hmm.
You see the hassle of parents. You
Right.
see parents, mothers, fathers trying to leave home like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I mean, we have seen parents on the road at 5 o'clock
Hmm.
here in Grenada
Yes, that's true.
trying to get their children either to school or to daycare,
Mm-hmm.
and to get them there on time, and to get from where they are leaving them for the day to get to their work, and hustling back from their work,
Mm-hmm.
pick up these younger children
Hmm.
and get in and taking the bus, as we would say in
Right.
Grenada.
Yes.
And that's a chore.
It is. It is.
It is a
Yeah.
chore.
Yeah.
So wise companies now are taking some of those responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
If parents know that, I could come to my workspace
Mm-hmm.
in time for work, and there's a space for my children to be secure and to be taken care of, it takes off so much stress.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And makes you look forward to actually going to work.
That's true.
And I think that's so critical, not, for what we see some companies adjusting to,
Mm-hmm.
and giving time off when necessary
Yeah.
to take care of your personal needs. Some companies also offer you psychological care
Yes. Yes.
and pay for those services,
Mm-hmm.
your own mental health,
Mental health. Yeah.
for the people that are important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And those are areas that we can neglect if we are not careful.
Mm-hmm.
How within, say, for example, a church context, how do we provide care for babies who we bring to our churches,
Right.
and so that the parent doesn't have to, be battling and keeping a child
Mm-hmm.
quiet
Yeah. Yeah.
within a church
So,
environment,
right.
and how we provide those kind of cares. If we provide psychological care and counseling services,
Mm-hmm.
because once our people are healthy,
Mm-hmm.
not only physically
Spiritually.
but mentally, spiritually, socially,
Right. Right.
we live longer. We can give more years of
That's true.
service
Better service too.
and better service, and we can produce a lot more.
Yes, and the impact can be greater.
Right. So
Yes.
those are some of the hidden values
Right.
within companies that they have unearthed,
Right.
that the companies who are not doing so well have not looked at those, the value that they can bring to the lives of their people, and even the customer care that we provide. Customer care is another area that they looked at. And we determine as purchasers, as buyers, whether we want to buy from this company or we go to another one, whether we go to the supermarket or go to this other supermarket. We'd buy this particular kind of vehicle. Depends on the kind of service that are given to us as customers.
True. Very true.
And businesses lose out.
A lot.
And the first person who meets you at the door is perhaps the most important person in your business or company. It will determine whether you have a customer or whether the person just walks out the door and goes next door and purchase the same kind of goods that they're looking for, that you could have offered a better service. In the same way, when we come to church, how do you greet people, especially a visitor? It determines whether that person will come back to your church or whether they will go to somewhere else where they feel welcome, where they feel valued. And so some of these values, we do not necessarily write them down or have them nailed down, but those are some of the observations that were made by the researchers. And sometimes we take those values for granted. The health, the physical health of their staff, of the people who work for them, how many weeks or time do they get for holidays. And so we're not short-circuiting the value of the people who contribute to the success and growth and development of our organizations. So sometimes we have to look deeper than just things that appear on the surface, and really look at some of these. So this is a book that I highly recommend, like all the others, of course. Hidden Value by O'Reilly and Piffer. It's a great book to read and to glean how we can learn from so many organizations, and the work is done for us already.
Yes.
And it's available, of course, online, and you can purchase a copy. Kindle is a great way to access your books at this time.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we want to encourage you to imbibe these hidden values depicted in these writings.
Right. So essentially what we would have covered today is that when people feel connected to something with a purpose greater than themselves, it inspires people to reach levels that they otherwise would have not obtained. Yes?
Yes.
Right. So we discussed today hidden value. We know that the face of business is changing every year. Even now in this COVID pandemic, we see a big change in how people do business, how businesses are set up. And to obtain the highest achievement or to be successful, we must be willing to innovate. We must respect and appreciate our human capital and tap into our intellectual and emotional resource of members and our employees. So we are talking and have been talking with Reverend John Lewis for the past 45 minutes. And I'm just going to ask you a little bit about the marital course. How is it going so far?
Great. The numbers are growing on the call. We have made it available to the public, basically.
Right.
And so we had 40 persons on the call on the last session. There are 2 more sessions that are happening on Monday evenings,
Right.
7 to 9 p.m. With Dr. Gill. And we trust that those of you who have not yet jumped on the call, the information, I'm sure, will be on this
Yes,
Facebook.
it's on our page, Hope FM, and you can find it there on our Facebook page.
Wonderful. So, yes, there's just been great feedback and from the participants, and we are hoping that in not too distant future we'll actually have these presenters come to Grenada and to have a face-to-face discussion with families and how we can improve our marital intelligence.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to say as we are about to end today's edition of our Leadership Plus?
Great. So perhaps more on a personal, getting down to the bottom line of this. Expressions and remembering birthdays of your staff, people.
Oh, yes. That's fun. That's important.
Yes. Sometimes we don't have a clue of the people we serve within our organization. When is their birthday? When are the anniversaries of married couples? Celebration of a win. If they have been studying, if they have been in taking a program and they have graduated. Sometimes we don't remember to celebrate those moments and make it fun for the people. Those are important pointers, and we don't have to wait till someone has a particular celebration, a birthday, an anniversary, a graduation, but on a weekly basis, if not on a daily basis, find something to say to someone that is uplifting, that will encourage them to keep going and to do what they're doing. And sometimes we are hesitant to compliment, but if we practice it, it becomes easier. Say, I think you're doing a great job. I really appreciate how you have done this task. And there's so many ways to express those kinds of things. A little a scribbled note to someone within your company, within your church. That was a good musical rendition. And sometimes we enjoy all these benefits, but do not take time to express appreciation and offer compliments to the people that we serve. An organization is often said to only be as good as its people. Directors, employers, employees, and leaders who make up an organization's human capital are critical to its success. So everyone, like we talked about last week, I believe.
Yes.
Everybody matters.
Yes, everyone matters.
And so that's look at the hidden value that is right before your eyes. But we all have a blind side to us, and bring people in that could do a serious analysis and do a serious, thorough evaluation of how we can improve not only the company but also our personal lives as well.
Yeah, I think what you said is very important about appreciating people, even on the workplaces. It is a lot more stressful now. So maybe it might be wise, if employers can make it an effort, make an effort to just to send a message, send a WhatsApp to your employees. Look, you're doing well. Keep up the good work. I like this. This is great, because these things do go a long way. Even parents can do the same things to their children. It may help lessen the mental issues and or suicides we see happening in our community. Just a simple positive word can really impact someone's life.
Thank you, Abigail. And let me just practice this right now to say that you're doing a great job at Hope FM. And thank you for your services to the management and staff of this great radio station.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend John, and I could extend the same to you. It's always a pleasure to sit here and chat with you. I've learned so much over the past few weeks, and I pray God's blessings to you. And to all our listeners, we appreciate you being here with us. And this is another edition of the Leadership Plus. Join us again next week, and we look forward to chatting with you and Reverend John. Have a blessed afternoon, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.